Why is it valid to assign to an empty list but not to an empty tuple? This came up in a recent Python talk. The statement does nothing meaningful, but it does not throw an exception either. I have the feeling this must be due to unpacking rules. You can do tuple unpacking with lists too, e.g. does what you would expect. As logical consequence, this also should work when the number of elements to unpack is 0, which would explain why assigning to an empty list is valid. This theory is further supported by what happens when you try to assign a non-empty list to an empty list. I would be happy with this explanation if the same would also be true for tuples. If we can unpack to a list with 0 elements, we should also be able to unpack to a tuple with 0 elements. No. However, it seems like unpacking rules are not applied for tuples as they are for lists. I cannot think of any explanation for this inconsistency. Is there a reason for this behavior?
I decided to try to use dis to figure out what's going on here, when I tripped over something curious. Somehow the Python compiler special cases an empty tuple on the LHS. This difference varies from the specification, which states, assignment of an object to a single target is recursively defined as follows. If the target is a target list enclosed in parentheses or in square brackets, the object must be an iterable with the same number of items as there are targets in the target list, and its items are assigned, from left to right, to the corresponding targets. So it looks like you found a legitimate, although ultimately inconsequential, bug in Python 2.7.8 and 3.4.1 tested. IronPython 2.6.1 exhibits the same difference, but Jython 2.7b3+ has a stranger behavior, with equals, starting a statement with seemingly no way to end it.
The comment by @user2357112 that this seems to be coincidence appears to be correct. The relevant part of the Python source code is in python/ast.c. Tuples have an explicit check that the length is not 0 and raise an error when it is. Lists do not have any such check, so there's no exception raised. I don't see any particular reason for allowing assignment to an empty list when it is an error to assign to an empty tuple, but perhaps there's some special case that I'm not considering. I'd suggest that this is probably a trivial bug and that the behaviors should be the same for both types.
It's a bug. This URL. However, it seems to be harmless, so I doubt it would get fixed for fear of breaking working code.
Assigning to a list is the wrong way to think about it. In all cases you are unpacking. The Python interpreter creates an unpacking instruction from all 3 ways to write it. There are no lists or tuples involved on the left-hand side. Code courtesy of /u/oldmanprismo. As you can see, all 3 statements are exactly the same. What unpacking does now is basically analogously for more or less names on the left side. Now, as at blckknght said, the compiler for some reason checks if the left-hand side is an empty tuple and disallows that, but not if it's an empty list. It's only consistent and logical to allow assigning to 0 names. Why not? You basically just assert that the iterable on the right-hand side is empty. That opinion also seems to emerge as consensus in the bug report at Gecko mentioned. Let's allow equals iterable.